Good afternoon. Welcome to our Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, January 21st, 2020. I'd like to call this meeting to order at this time and ask if there's any declarations of interest. Seeing none at this time, I would go to community announcements. And before we start that, I would just like to speak for a moment. It is with sadness that I share the passing of former Councillor Elvin Pegg. Elvin served the community of East Gwillimbury as a councillor for the period of 1975 to 1982 and was dedicated to building a great community for our residents. He was a kind and gentle man who had the best interests of East Gwillimbury always at heart. On behalf of council, I extend our condolences to Elvin's family and friends. Flags at the town facilities have been lowered to half-mast in honor of Elvin's passing, and at this time I would ask everyone to stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll proceed now with community announcements, and perhaps I'll start with you, Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My committees are all busy with their first meetings of the season, and they're ramping up for an exciting slate of events, art shows and pancake breakfasts and heritage celebrations and so on. And as firm dates are made clear, then I will certainly be announcing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We had, getting back into the swing of things in this new decade, we had a good pancake breakfast back, seems like an eternity now, back on the 11th, and that was well attended. And we have lots of other good events coming up with all the different committees. And we had a good EG Chamber of Commerce networking breakfast this morning. That was well attended. And if I could take this moment just to put a pledge out there, or a pitch to Megan and Harry. I think when they're looking for a place to move to, I think East Gwillimbury would make a marvelous spot. We've got affordable real estate. It's a great place to raise kids, and our no tabloid press. The EG Express is very respectful, so I would welcome them to East Gwillimbury. Thank you.
Start a rumor there now. Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. I want to start by wishing a belated Christmas to our Orthodox community who celebrated on January 7th, and to wish a Happy New Year to our Chinese, Vietnamese, and Korean residents as they start their celebrations. All three of the committees that I serve on as council liaison have been very busy since our last council meeting. The Hall and Landing Community Group that I sit on with Councillor Foster held their holiday lights competition called Light Up the Landing. We had planned to have 5 winners, but the committee came up with 6 that were outstanding. So we went with 6 winners and 3 businesses, including the Hall and Landing Fire Station. So congrats and thanks to staff for all of their efforts to light up the landing. Honorable mention to our library. We'll have to up their game next year to beat out the fire station. It was a very well received event, considering that it was in its infancy this year. And we already have plans for next year, and it's going to be a bigger and better event then. The next event for this group you can put on your calendars is the DL on HL, the Down Low on Hall and Landing. It's an information day on everything Hall and Landing, and that's going to be on April 18th at the Hall and Landing Community Center. Moving on to Environment Committee. In addition to the 2 recommendations that you have before you, we're working on our Green Up Clean Up event, which will be held on May the 3rd. So you can add that to your calendars as well. And the Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee is working with the East Gwillimbury Library to celebrate Black History Month next month by bringing in an author on February 29th. So stay tuned for more details on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Persicini.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not going to repeat myself, but I guess the pancake breakfast was very outstanding. And our town crier got a 20-year plaque from the mayor and council. It was a great event. There was a lot of people. I must have been over 200 people, and it's a great thing to see all the people community and getting together, and the kids and so on. And I also want to reach out there to the families of Alvin Pegg. He was on my committee for over 10 years for the Persicini run, and a great human being, great supporter. And he used to really get excited when he was in charge of the posters from East Squanbury to Georgina, and he was really out there with a few of the people helping him, putting posters around town. So he's a great guy. The day of, great guy. Anyway, my heart goes to the family. Thank you.
Councillor Morton.
Well, I have to admit that I put myself on a holiday, and I didn't do much of anything. If I didn't have to leave the house, I stayed right in there all cuddled up and watched television. So that's it for now, but I'm sure I'll get back into the swing of things as we are back into council now.
We are back into the swing of things. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple things without repeating. The Light Up the Landing event that the Home Landing Community Group put on was a lot of fun. And I think for the first kick at the can, as you might say, it came off really well. So we're looking forward to next year. The New Year's Eve event was well attended. I wasn't there the whole evening, but while I was there was a lot of people there. The council pancake breakfast, I think we as a group need to say a few words for maybe some better weather. It might have got the crowd out a little bit earlier. It was raining like crazy that morning. I would also encourage everybody to drop into the Mount Albert Library and have a look at the renovations over there. That is it's made a world of difference to the location. And just a very, very quick plug for my friends and family that are involved with Christ Church. Their Wednesday lunches have started again, and soup and a sandwich lunch for I think $4 or maybe $5 certainly can't be beat. So if you're around, that's the place to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a thank you to all of our staff over the holidays, the New Year's Eve, the pancake breakfast, and the library opening. Staff worked very hard and to get it ready. And if we could, senior staff, if you could pass our thanks along to them as well. I received notice just last week from our local member of provincial parliament, Caroline Mulrooney, that the town is receiving a grant for the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund in the amount of $485,579. Fund provides funding for small, rural, and northern communities to develop a renew of their infrastructure. So we'll look forward to staff. I'm sure it was an application that went in, and so we'll look forward to a report coming forward now, knowing that we did receive the money, and we thank her very much for advocating on our behalf. And with that, we would move to our community attributes for the month of January. Councillor Morton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We always start on a new month with our attributes, and January's attribute is optimism. When I work with optimism, I will be cheerful and smile, emphasize the positive and eliminate the negative, endeavor to build self-confidence in others, begin each day with a commitment to the best that I can do. Look at today, look towards tomorrow, and learn from yesterday. Say good morning and good night to my coworkers. Endeavor to pay someone a compliment every day. Acknowledge awards and other recognitions that my coworkers receive. Offer words of encouragement to others. Set high but achievable goals for myself. And in closing, this quote: "You are only a decision away from responding with hope instead of fear, with encouragement instead of criticism, and with belief instead of despair." And with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. We will now move to our presentations, and we have Mr. Rabeau, Director of Capital Planning and Development from the region of York, making a presentation to committee regarding the Upper York Sewage Solution environmental assessment. We're looking forward to you. You're with optimism, yes.
This is on. You stole my entry.
Welcome.
In the spirit of optimism, I can't wait to deliver this presentation. Through you, Madam Mayor, very happy to be here today. I think this is now becoming my biannual visit, so I'll probably be back in the fall at some time, I'm guessing. With me today is our Chairman and CEO, Wayne Emerson, who's participating and in attendance to hear the presentation. So the presentation today is really threefold. I'm going to give a quick update on the UISS project and environmental assessment. I'm going to talk about our project phosphorus offset program, which is part of the EA, but we also have some demonstration projects going on, which I want to discuss with you today. And I'm going to talk about the Holland Landing lagoons, and then we'll go over next steps. So just in order of business, in terms of what the UISS project is about, going back to 2014 when we submitted this environmental assessment, the project is really about three major components. The first big component, which you're very aware of, is the Water Reclamation Center, the facility to be constructed in East Gwillimbury, which is going to accommodate growth in the future development and short-term development and midterm development horizon. The phosphorus offset program, which is a program to remove additional phosphorus from the Lake Simcoe watershed. And I'm going to be talking a bit more about that today. And in the middle, the EA in 2014 had a component for the York-Durham sewage system, force main and sewer through Newmarket. Now, as you know, that portion of the project was more about system resiliency, dealing with pressure that's coming onto the system in terms of sewage production. That project was taken out of the EA and advanced as part of a declaration order by the province. It's currently under construction and should be completed by the end of 2021. So if you're in Newmarket, you probably see live shaft construction and everything around the area. It's actually quite neat to visit. So moving on to the environmental assessment. Unfortunately, this slide seems a little gloomy because it's the exact same slide I presented to you last year, the year before, and maybe even the year before that. No, 2018. So what this is really saying is that we've submitted the EA in 2014. We've gone through a process with the ministry and done our back and forth. The ministry has told us that they're satisfied with our environmental assessment. It meets the terms of reference and is in compliance with the Act. There's nothing needed further from us. Some more back and forth, but ever since 2018, we've been informed that they're reviewing their own duty to consult with First Nations, and they've not been able to make a decision on the environmental assessment. And that is where we stand today. Nothing official has come from the province in that time. So we continue to correspond with the province at all levels, trying to get information and advance our need and concern about not having the approval as of now and what it means for the sewage system and growth in the tri-cities or tri-towns of Aurora, Newmarket, and East Gwillimbury. So we're working on that, continuing to advocate and waiting for their response on the decision. Now, on the project side itself, as you know, we've been advancing other components in the absence of the environmental assessment. We're basically complete the design of the Water Reclamation Center, all the conveyance. We've advanced demonstrations for the phosphorus offset program. We've done studies. We've done field reviews. We have other projects going on to try and meet the term gap in terms of once we get approval, there is some time required to plan, get licensing, et cetera, for the plant, do all our offsets, and then actually construct this state-of-the-art facility. So in the meantime, we're looking for other capacity opportunities. And again, we continue to engage with the province to try and advance that approval. So I want to talk a little bit about the phosphorus offset program for a second because it is a major component of the EA. In 2008, when the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan came out, you'll probably recall or you're aware that it stipulated that there's no new plants allowed to be constructed in the Lake Simcoe watershed. However, what is acceptable is replacement or expansion of existing plants. So when we went into the environmental assessment, the province created a framework and stipulated that the Holland Landing lagoons would essentially be a replacement with the WRC. So the WRC would be a replacement facility for the Holland Landing lagoons. That way, it met the requirements of the Act. However, they did stipulate that because there is an increment on phosphorus within the Holland Landing lagoons to the Water Reclamation Center, we would need to create another offset within the watershed, being the phosphorus offset program. So we set up a program and framework to do that removal through storm ponds, retrofitting storm ponds. However, we're doing it on a 3-to-1 calculation. So for every kilogram of phosphorus that we need to take out in terms of our increment from the lagoons to the reclamation center, we need to take out, or we propose to take out 3 kilograms. So it's quite a bit more than what's required, but I think it's a good environmental sustainable solution for the watershed overall. So moving on, in the environmental assessment we submitted in 2014, we stipulated about 9 ponds at the beginning before the WRC gets commissioned. So the Water Reclamation Center is, has a large capacity. It's got a capacity for about 80,000 people. But that's not all going to happen day one, obviously. So the offsets within the watershed will happen incrementally. The stormwater ponds will be retrofitted as we commission and bring flow on. Once we get to a certain amount, we'll have to have other retrofits in place. So right now, the EA suggests about 9 ponds to be constructed initially before the plant is operational. And then stage 2 would be brought in subsequent years into the initial operation of the plant. Now, that was 2014. We're now in 2020. A couple years back, we started to get a little concerned about the stale dating of the EA and just time going by and us not being able or allowed to move forward with any of the solutions within the environmental assessment. And we know these phosphorus offsets need to be in place in advance of the Water Reclamation Center being operational. So what we decided to do was start a demonstration program. We wanted to go out and retrofit a couple of these ponds in advance of the approval and just show the technology, show how it works, and also show the province how we might monitor the phosphorus removal from the watershed. So with the delay, we decided to move forward with that program, and we started this demonstration program, and we selected 2 ponds. So 2 ponds are proceeding, one in Aurora and one on the boundary of Newmarket and East Gwillimbury. It's actually a shared pond. The Aurora pond is going to be under construction starting in the coming months. It's out for tender right now. And the East Gwillimbury pond would be going to tender in the coming months. It's probably a capital investment construction-wise of just short of $3.5 million. I think the total cost is in around the $4 million range. We're at in 2018, we reached 100% design. However, we've been working through agreements, et cetera, in terms of getting the final details together. So what you'll see coming in the next month is a report from your staff basically detailing the parameters of that agreement in terms of your ongoing operation and maintenance of the pond and how those phosphorus offsets would be transferred to the region in order to go against the Upper York program into the future. And we hope to have that completed this year. And again, you'll see details of how that agreement and framework is working in the coming weeks. So now I'm going to move off to the Hull and Landing lagoons and what's happening there. We know this is a very sensitive issue for your community and something that we're very aware of. It being tied to the Upper York environmental assessment, it's kind of been hanging around as an ongoing issue as the delay has continued. So we're trying to find ways to manage what's been an odor concern for your community over the years. We have been cleaning the cells over the years, trying to get out any of the sediment that's in there that does create some of the odor. We've been doing some modeling testing. Come this year, we're actually going to do some flow analysis to try and manage the amount of solids that we're keeping in the lagoons and just trying to see if we can lessen a little bit of the impact. The major thing that we want to pilot, and we are going to pilot officially, is a micronutrient compound that we're going to add to the ponds, which is it's been tested and proven to limit hydrogen sulfide, which is the odor that's being spelt, hydrogen sulfide creation. It's made to limit it and basically reduce odors. So we're going to try that out. Now, that's going to happen in 2020. However, we do have to get a new license, a new ECA for the addition of the micronutrients. So we have to work with the province to get that approval. It is a different treatment process to what we're doing now. So we can't just start dosing as we feel suitable. We have to go through those proper channels, but we're going to try to expedite that as much as possible. I don't know if we're going to meet the spring thaw, but we would endeavor to have at least by mid-year get something started. And we want to see how feasible this micronutrient is. It's a new technology, and we want to see if it can help manage the odors going forward. So just on last steps, we're working with the province. We are anticipating an approval in the near future. We stand by our environmental assessment and all the work we've done, and we feel that the solution for the Upper York project is a good one, and it's a sustainable one, and it's actually a benefit to the Lake Simcoe watershed. So look for us to continue anticipating approval and being ready to move that project forward. and work with the province, much like how much we've advanced the project itself in terms of design and other property acquisition, et cetera. The stormwater demonstration program, which is a subset of the overall project, you will be seeing more in that in the coming weeks. We feel it's a great program, a great opportunity for our local municipalities through the demonstrations and through the Upper York project. It's something that we all need to be aware of in terms of broader stormwater management across the board going forward. I think with the weekend we had in terms of the storms we saw on Saturday, we're looking at 100-year events now that aren't happening every 100 years. They're happening every 5 years, 2 years. And we spilled. So sewage capacity, storm management, all these things are of paramount concern when it comes to these high flows that we're experiencing. So great opportunity here. And obviously the Hull and Landing Lagoons continuing to advance analysis and assessment and looking at options to mitigate odors from those facilities as we wait for the Upper York approval and the WRC implementation. That does conclude my formal presentation, and I'm here to take questions as you wish.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rabeau. It's certainly good news to us that the micronutrient project that you're working on, you recognize that there is concerns in our community, and it sounds like it's something brand new. So try it on us, and we're wide open to learn whatever we can. And I thank you very much for addressing that right up front here today. I'm sure that there are some questions. I have some, but I'll leave them until members of council. Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Mr. Rabeau. Thank you very much for your presentation. As always, it's informative. Nothing personal, but the next time I see you, I'd like to hear that, we've got go-ahead on the Upper York. From what I can tell, from what I'm hearing and reading from you, this is a case of political will, where the decision has been made, and we are, as a town, we're kind of handcuffed to grow any further until this is resolved. And I take great concern. You mentioned about the EA becoming stale. How far away are we from that? Are we in a position where we'd have to get another one ordered, or can a minister's order take care of that? And other than political will, is there anything else holding up the progress of this project?
Through you, Madam Mayor, and maybe I'll start with the question about the EA becoming stale, and perhaps that's probably misuse of language on my part, because certainly the components of the environmental assessment are not becoming stale. I think the major tie to that is all the work we've been doing in parallel to advance the design. So when I say 100% design is completed, an EA is very conceptual, whereas a detailed design is very current and very up with technology and times and how advanced things are. So our design and to date is very new and fresh. So we're ready to deliver something that's state of the art and current. So I wouldn't say that only time has made it stale and that it's been 6 years since we've submitted it. So when we do something, we would have anticipated when we submitted it, we had an approval by mid 2015. So that would have put us, in construction and, a few years out from that. So a time now where we'd have probably close to an operating facility. So I think it's just time goes by, but we've had the benefit of a council that supported us, has supported the project, allowed us to advance all parameters allowed us to acquire property. So we've invested a lot in this going forward. And I think, not being a politician and how the politics work around these things, I think, there are positive discussions that you hear happening and you hope for advancement. And I think just given that we continue to have a look forward approach and move the project forward, that there's some positivity around getting that approval in the future.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. Again, you said it right. We hear about this a lot, so we're certainly interested in the information that's coming forward. I guess just to settle my mind and maybe some others at the table here, when you talk about completing odor testing and modeling, I guess just is that facility consistent with the same type of facility in other municipalities as far as odor the kind of things that we hear complaints about. And I'm assuming it is. And I guess second to that is, you spoke about a pilot project and adding micronutrients. And it sounds promising. But is there anything more that you can say about expectations about where this has been done before, how well it works, that type of thing?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So I think from the lagoons process itself in terms of wastewater treatment, it is a fairly antiquated process. However, it's very effective. It's a good system. It works well. It treats the sewage. But as you get communities growing around it, it becomes a little bit burdensome. So you look for other opportunities. Given that, I mean, if you had another conventional plant or plants that are more modern, but conventional treatment, you'd still have odors from it. So it's consistent with what other odors you'd encounter as close proximity. So the modeling kind of looks at how gases are produced, how they disperse, and the models basically go to a certain area outside the radius of the lagoons and say, okay, this is what you can expect in terms of odor units here. So, and there's a real science behind it in terms of detection and who can detect what. Some people can detect 100 parts per million, 1,000, or have to be way up there, or people can detect 1 part per million. So it changes from person to person on how they actually can receive the odors, et cetera. So we've just done that analysis to try and figure out how we can manage the gas creation. So from a micronutrients perspective, so what this is, it's a plant-based product. I mean, there's other products you can add to sewage out there that help manage the creation of hydrogen sulfide. But the benefit of this one is it's plant-based, it's biodegradable, it's not going to harm the environment at all. It's not going to upset our treatment. I mean, the treatment is based on bugs actually breaking down the material in there. So the solids that come in, there's actual bacteria that's breaking it down. And you don't want to harm that. So things can harm that, but this is a fairly harmless a micronutrient. But what it does is it actually enables other bacteria within. So there's bacteria that break down the sulfate in the sewage, and that's what creates the gas. But what it does is it'll actually have it create or break down other components that aren't as odor producing, and it'll subdue kind of the hydrogen sulfide breakdown or creation and the sulfate breakdown. So it's been proven to work. Has it been tested broad scale? I would say no. So can I say it's going to solve the problem? Absolutely not. We think it will have a benefit to some scale, and we want to understand what that scale is and how much we can reduce the odor, and just play with dosing and analysis to figure out what the options are and how much we can actually dose with on an annual basis. It's fairly a valued product. It's not that costly, so it's a good opportunity to test something.
Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. It's interesting, the comment from my colleague about how this handcuffs growth. I think a lot of our residents are very happy that growth is being handcuffed right now. Where I have issues is that the lagoons are tied to this. So I'm all in favor of the delay, except that we've had the lagoons tied to this. We can't decommission the lagoons until this is approved. Now, I understand it's in provincial legislation about expansion or replacement. I get that, but given the complaints and the odors around it, I think we've let our residents down by not doing more to separate those two projects, to be able to reduce the lagoons to a bare minimum, and then call the Upper York Sewage Solution a replacement of a smaller lagoon. But I do thank you for addressing the odor issues. I think it's never too late to try and see what we can do. It's disappointing that the residents have to go through another spring thaw, but I'm hoping with the odor sampling that we can get a baseline. I'm hoping that there'll be a lot of odor sampling during the spring. And, I hear what you're saying, that everyone smells odors differently, but I don't think there's anyone who lives within a kilometer of those lagoons that doesn't smell them. So if we can get a baseline sample, that would be absolutely wonderful. And I'm hoping also that you can arm us with some more information about exactly what we're doing. So because we get a lot of calls from residents, and it would be nice to have something that we could hand them that shows exactly what these micronutrients are doing and what we're expecting, as well as what sort of the expected timeline is on the Upper York and excuse me, how environmentally friendly it will be with the phosphorus offset. I think that that's something that really needs to be presented to our residents, and you can do a much better job of it than I can. So I would appreciate something to help with that. And lastly, my question to you is, when's the earliest that the lagoons could be decommissioned?
Through you, Madam Mayor, in the current framework, I mean, the lagoons are tied to the WRC operation. So once the WRC becomes operational, the lagoons would be taken offline. Under that regime, if we had an approval in the coming month, we'd achieve by construction probably by 2027 is what we're saying. So you're looking at still 7 years with the lagoons in place under the current framework.
Okay, then I would hope that we can still continue to advocate with the provincial government about untying those two projects, because if we can get through some of the downstream projects, if we can get some capacity, we can at least reduce the size of the lagoons. It's decades old technology, and I think that we've been promising residents for so long, and if we're still another 7 years out, and that's probably minimum. We could be 10, 15 years out. I don't think that we can just, shrug our shoulders and say, sorry, it's the two projects are tied together. I think we have to push back on the provincial government to untie those projects. Thank you.
Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Rabeau, I know you were concerned about sort of the expression of the stale-dated EA, but I know that when that EA was filed, there was a price tag on this project. I don't recall what it was, but it was a big one. I'm wondering if you have a sense of what that price escalation has, what the price escalation has been as we've been waiting for that EA, because as we know, costs go up, inflationary pressures happen, and do you have an estimate of what the current price tag on this project would be? And I guess the second part of my question is, once you get your EA, do you have funding available to start construction for a 7-year quick construction? Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So in terms of the capital program and how much has changed in the years since the environmental assessment, there has been changes. There has been increments as we've advanced what was a conceptual, view to the detailed design. We've added different components. We've had other ground-related issues we've had to manage in terms of foundations and having to add piles in terms of building a foundation for the facility. That all being said, I don't think it's incremental beyond what would be considered normal in terms of any costing over a 6-year period in terms of advancing detailed design and how those range of estimates occur. I don't have the exact number to date, but we just took our capital budget to council late last year. And I believe for the phosphorus offset program and the WRC Water Reclamation Center with all the conveyance, et cetera, it's in the range of, I'm going to say 630 million, but I would have to confirm that for you. It's a published number, so it's out there, but I can confirm that for you. So around 630 million. And in terms of our budget, it is currently in the plan. It is accounted for. As you do know, in terms of our growth-related projects, we debt finance the capital and recover through development charges. So this is, again, a debt finance project. It is currently accommodated in our capital program through our debt management strategy and in terms of DC collections that we anticipate being brought in through this project. And it is currently based on as soon as possible approval, which would be a 2027 completion. And that is in that 20 to 29 10-year program.
Councillor Persuccini.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, thank you very much for coming up, give us an update and let the community know, because it's on air, and hope that they'll view it and it'll be good for us so we don't have to answer so many questions to them. I have two questions. The first one is the timeline. It's been changed already once. Do you think this will hold this time, or? I mean, I know you haven't got a crystal ball, but there's, like we changed once, we've changed again, and we keep putting it forward. Yeah. Is there anything we could do? That was the next question before you answer that one. There is a municipality to address the province unitedly with all the other partners within the region to put the pressure on them, enough is enough. What can we do on our part to put a little more pressure on the province? So those 2 questions.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So on one hand, yes, the timeline has changed, and we've seen, obviously, with the delay of the environmental assessment, we've started to see, the EA became on the critical path, and we've seen a 1-for-1 delay now. So if we don't get an approval today, every day we lose is a day added on to when this thing can be operational. So we're aware of that. In our capital program this year, we did identify a 27 completion. That would mean an approval needed in the coming months, and I mean early Q1 this year, early Q2. That said, I mean, although we've got nothing official from the province in terms of where they're at with this, a lot of discussions continue to happen. I think, again, there's positivity in terms of advancing this project and how important it is. So, I personally stand that I feel the province will make a good decision here. But again, we're waiting for some official a documentation to say a decision has been made and we can move forward. But there's a lot of groups talking and working to try and talk to staff and explain the project and the benefits of the project, and from an environmental, economic, and other standpoints, social standpoints, of how beneficial this project can be.
Question was, is there any way that we can put the pressure on? Is that whoever's in partnership with us, so 3 or 4 or 5 municipalities of the cities, to write letters, and would that help?
Through you, Madam Mayor, absolutely. I think from a staff standpoint, we're only at the staff level. We're working with staff at the province. We're doing as much as we can. But I think from a political will and standpoint, a lot of things have happened through our regional council, through our chairman's office, through our mayors. There has been correspondence. There has been interest. There's been meetings, etc. So a lot has happened to try and drive this forward. And I think there's still will to continue to advance that. So I'd say those discussions are happening, and a continued assessment of the state of this assessment politically is happening. But political individuals like yourselves and our regional council are always looking at this and making their own decisions about how to pressure or create an understanding of how important this project is.
Thank you very much for being here. And yes, we appreciate you coming yearly or even bi-yearly, hoping that you have some further information. It's no secret that of all of the projects that we have going on, and we have some pretty exciting things happening in East Gwillimbury, that this new plant, along with the decommissioning of the lagoons, is number 1 for East Gwillimbury. And that's no different than it was 2 or 3 years ago, or 5 or 7 years ago. And so everybody is counting on the province to do the right thing and make it happen. It's not just about growth, it's about eliminating 45-year technology with the lagoons, if my math is correct, and it's long overdue. If we didn't have it, it would be a whole different scenario, but I continue to tell people that they were built 45 years ago so Holland Landing could grow a little bit. And if it hadn't have been for that, many of the people that live near that would not have had houses within. So I thank you very much for coming back. I know that should there be anything at all that comes along, that you won't hesitate to be back to us again. And I know you're working with the ministry as much as you possibly can to make it happen. The fact that we have Chair Emerson here today, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us in East Gwillimbury. I think it speaks volumes of the region for both of you to be here on a regular basis, how important it is for you as well to work with us to make a difference in East Gwillimbury. So I thank you very much. With that, could I have a motion to receive Councillor Persicini and Councillor Foster? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Do you have some other news there?
No.
Oh, just thought I wasn't going to move on until I was sure that there might not be something else that we. Thank you. I didn't want to miss any opportunity. Okay, with that, we will move to deputations. And Mr. Clerk, could you introduce our deputant, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Melanie Osmond, Event Assistant, Southlake Regional Health Center Foundation, making a deputation to committee regarding the 2020 Run or Walk for South.
Welcome. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you. Presentation. So Madam Mayor and Councillors, thank you so much for allowing me to come and speak with you today. My name is Melanie Osmond, and I'm speaking to you on behalf of the staff of the Southlake Foundation, and would like to invite you to join us again for our 2020 SL5K. For almost 100 years, Southlake has shown a passion for care for our communities. From the beginnings of a 6-bed health home, Southlake has evolved to become a 471-bed health center that provides leading-edge hospital services. Southlake is our community hospital. It's where our friends, families, neighbors, and community members go when there's a medical emergency. As you can see, Southlake is a very busy hospital, including a top-ranking regional cancer program, the 4th largest regional cardiac care program in the province, state-of-the-art shoulder replacement, cardiac procedures that improve patient outcomes, and a surgical program that is a cornerstone of our hospital. What these numbers don't show is the qualitative successes that we have had in these programs. I'm sure you know that our communities are continuing to grow, and Southlake is looking to the future to ensure we continue to meet the needs of our community, but we can't do that alone. At Southlake, we know of the power of many. The Run for Southlake is one of the many ways our communities fund the tools and equipment that the provincial funding doesn't cover, allowing us to continue to bring leading-edge care close to our homes. Events like the Nature's Emporium Southlake, Run for Southlake, allows us to bring the community together to run towards a common goal, raising money to bring and keep leading-edge care close to home. We are asking each of you to join us on April 26th to run or walk with our communities to raise money for our community hospital. In 2019, the Mayor's Challenge raised over $36,000 across our 6 regions, or 6 municipalities, with Team EG raising $7,369. So congratulations. Last year, Team Aurora won and is currently holding the Mayor's Challenge trophy pictured here, as well as the bragging rights. I'm looking forward to seeing an even tighter race this year. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you on April 26th, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. As you know, East Gwillimbury's been in it since we had the very first municipal challenge, and we have had the cup a few times here in our council chambers. So we look forward to taking part every year. I speak for myself that my children and my grandchildren were born at the hospital, and it is our go-to place when in time of need. And I think when I look across the table here, I think I speak for most members of council. The same thing holds true. Normally what we do is have one member of council who leads the team, and then we rally the troops, and many times we have most of our staff out as well. If it's not a run, it's a walk to raise funds. So thank you very much for coming today. I don't know if there's any questions at all. Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's been my privilege to be a team captain of Team EG for the past 9 years. And in fact, aside from that nice total from last year of $7,300, over the 9 years, our team and our community has supported the hospital to the tune of $56,666. So with a 10th year, I would expect that we would be able to achieve some really good results. And with committee's approval, I would be happy to captain Team EG again this year. About 7 years ago, I did the 5K waddle when I was very pregnant with my daughter, who was born at Southlake. And just this past weekend, she indicated a desire to participate this year. So that'll be exciting. Thank you.
I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I was sure hoping you were going to. Although we do have other people here now that would step up as well. So there's always someone to assist with you along the way. Thank you very much. Any questions from members of council? Seeing none, thank you so much. We'll wear our buttons proud.
Thank you so
And
much.
we'll get a picture off to you very shortly today. And we'll rally our community, our staff, and friends that are out there to join us as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Moved by Councillor Roy-DiClemente. All those in favor? And that's carried. We are at item F, Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services with Councillor Carruthers in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have two reports today, both stemming from the Environmental Advisory Committee. This is something that the committee has been working on for a number of months and have brought forward reports. And I want to, first of all, welcome Stéphane Deschamps, who everyone here is well aware of, and he sits on our committee and he's here to answer any questions. I also want to thank our staff liaison, Matt Hemingway, who was very instrumental in helping put this together. I've spoken with General Manager Molinari about this, and it's something that staff feels very doable. I'm going to turn it over to him to speak to this, and if you have any questions, Stefan is here to answer as well. Thank you, Mr. Molinari.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Essentially, there are two proposals. One's for a raw materials company battery collection recycling program. In discussions with General Manager Carmazon, both of these projects will involve a bit of a coordinated effort on both of our parts in order to implement. But it's something that we feel we can do. If we run into some issues, we can certainly bring those issues back to council through the implementation process for further direction. And maybe after a year's time or so, advise council how the programs went and provide a bit of a report on the success and potential issues and maybe some any minor adjustments that would be required to both those programs.
Thank you very much. We have two motions on this report. One is to receive it, and the second one is that council endorse the concept of a battery collection program and direct staff to work with RMC on the implementation of the battery collection and recycling program. Can I have someone to move that, please? Councillor Morton. Are there any questions? Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to staff, I'm just wondering, normally we receive advisory committee reports under other business, so this was a little bit unusual. I wasn't sure if staff had actually done their own research on the RMC organization. From my perspective, I'm happy to endorse and support the program, but I would like to forward that report to staff or report to us on implementation and any potential wrinkles that could emerge. I think they're both wonderful ideas, but I just want to make sure that they also have staff's endorsement as well.
Yes. The reason it's at the top of the agenda is because we have a committee member here and we didn't want to have him have to sit through the whole day. So that's why we've moved it up. And in my many discussions with General Manager Molinari on this, we know staff do have the endorsement of this, and his suggestion is that if any issues arise in the execution of this, that we bring a report back then rather than further delaying it by going for a report that will look very similar to this.
Okay, thank you.
Is that fine? Okay, any other questions? Councillor Foster.
I actually spoke on this, I believe, last year around budget time, the need for battery collection program for us to work on. But so I think it's great that this has come through, and I'm happy to support. But I have kind of the same questions as Councillor Roy-DiClemente. I'm wondering how we ended up with one company and no other information about any other companies that may or may not supply this same type of program. And the other thing that I wondered about, give us some success stories of how this has worked in other municipalities before we get in too deep. Thanks.
Okay. The company approached the environmental committee. They might have approached staff first, who bounced it to the environmental committee. I'm not exactly sure on that. But the committee did thoroughly vet them, and I've taken a look at the other success stories. And I think that there's a lot in here, and I'm going to turn it over to Stefan to follow up on that.
Yes, one of the advantages of this is we actually have experience, at least I did, and I think Councillor Morton may recall that we had a battery recycling program in Mount Albert. It was the same company, and the program was quite popular and successful. The problem was it was entirely run by private citizens, and it required the storage of very large bins to hold them, and that was problematic because nobody really wanted that in their garage or their house. The advantage now is we're taking it on a full municipal level, but this company was very responsive. They kept things clean. They did a good job. We are confident that they were properly disposing and recycling all of the material received, and they've enhanced it in that one of the issues is that when we contaminated, and I put quotes around that, the batteries with rechargeables, which have a different stream, they were penalizing us, but they were no longer going to do that. They're going to deal with those properly as well. So we don't have to worry about trying to figure out what is a NiCad battery versus what is the other kinds that are not rechargeable. So the track record and the fact they approached us and they're enthusiastic and seemed like it was a very simple one for us to decide.
Does that satisfy you? Wonderful. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. We're going to move on to the diabetes collection and, the used textile diversion being done by Diabetes Canada. Again, this was something that the committee looked into. They approached us, and I'm going to turn it over to Stefan to add anything else to that.
This one has quite a bit of track record, and I don't know if the full proposal has been shared with council yet, or because they had quite an elaborate proposal where they have examples of what they've done in the past.
No, we just had the report.
Okay, because it was attached to our report, so I didn't know. But
yeah,
it's available, obviously, if anybody is interested. They've done this in a number of communities. It seemed like a no-brainer. It takes textiles out of the landfill stream. They're either recycled into materials that use the fibers, or in some cases they're resold and reused. And it raises money for diabetes. And again, the program is a turnkey. It does involve some staff in terms of coordination and collection points, but the company is entirely responsible for the maintenance of the pickup points and the ensuring everything is kept cleaned and in good order. So there seemed to be no downside, and the fact that they've got the experience and it's a well-established program that's simple to implement, including communications and everything else, they support us in every way possible that we could imagine.
Thank you. And I know King does this, and there was a number of other municipalities that have also linked with Diabetes Canada. The committee was looking for something that was sustainable. We do the green up, clean up, and in the past we've done other recycling days and events, but we're looking for something that's going to be ongoing. Residents know it's there, and takes very little work from staff or volunteers. So this was a perfect opportunity for that. Proposal is to put the bins in areas where there is a camera so that there's always eyes on, so we don't end up with dumping that you see at some of these boxes. And if you've seen the ones in King, they're large enough to handle what the community is bringing in. So again, in conversations with General Manager Molinari, we're in contact constantly. So if there's issues, we'll get those addressed right away. And if there's significant issues, a report would come back to council on this one as well. So first of all, can I get a motion for the two recommendations that are before us? One is to receive, and the second is that council endorse DC Used Textile Diversion Program and direct staff to coordinate and implement the program with Diabetes Canada. Moved by Councillor Crone. Questions? Councillor Morton.
Well, I'm a little confused that this is being brought up, because we have someone that calls the people I know in Mount Albert that and tell us when they're going to be coming around for pickup, and to leave it outside the front door. And they come along and they pick it up and it's gone. And I mean, I just had one done the beginning of the week, and so I don't understand why this company, whether it's the same company or So why are they not going to be coming around to door now?
A lot of people don't use that service. It's tied to, they're usually calling landlines, first of all. And secondly, a lot of people don't like leaving their stuff outside their front door. I've heard of cases where Amazon packages are put on top of the diabetes stuff and everything gets hauled away. So the ability to just drop it off, other municipalities have found very, very useful. So this is an additional way for people to recycle. And if you see in the report, 95% is going into the garbage. So, that's great that you and your neighbors are doing it through the phone, but a lot of people are not. So we want to get those textiles out of our landfill and give people one more way that they can drop it off. If they're at the arena, if they're at the library, if they're at this building here, we'll have different ways for them to drop it off. And it also serves as a reminder as they're coming in, the bin's there. Oh yeah, I got to remember to bring my stuff in.
So will the company be paying for the advertising to let people know that this is what the new program is going to be? Or is it the town that's going to have to cover that amount of money?
So I think the bins will speak for themselves as far as advertising goes. I'm not sure that they've committed to funding the advertising.
My recollection is no, they're not funding the any kind of paid communication. The assumption from the committee was that we would just include it in normal town communications announcing programs like this.
Yeah, just like with the bag tags and that sort of thing. It's one more level. And the great thing about this is it's diverting from landfill. So we'll have, hopefully, less garbage that needs to be picked up in East Gwillimbury. So it really is a benefit to us.
But they will support with the messaging with preset messages and graphics and imagery, and so to make it very simple.
Yeah. Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm delighted to see that our Environment Advisory Committee has brought this forward. I've been asking for this for years, and it hasn't materialized. Over the years, staff have advised me that it's not quite so simple as simply putting a bin out and having people drop stuff off. And so, again, I raise the concern that while this is an absolutely worthwhile initiative, I feel that there are probably some operational concerns that we need to iron out before we simply dive in. Pun intended, quite frankly, because I know that in other places there have been concerns about people getting stuck, for example, in these textile recycling bins, as well as if the collection isn't fast enough and the community's having a big clear out weekend, they tend to look pretty overgrown with things that aren't textiles, with other household materials, and there are concerns that I think staff would appreciate an opportunity to address in a report to us. And so I ask if we can simply receive, endorse the program, support the initiative, and ask staff to report back to us with an implementation plan.
Thank you. I'm going to turn this over to General Manager Molinari to respond to.
Through you, Madam Chair. Certainly staff can proceed. There's two ways to go about it. We can either proceed and look into this matter, and if we determine that there are some roadblocks or things that we feel would not work very well from an operations perspective, report back to council. Or certainly we can do that research up front, iron out a bit of an agreement with the vendor, and then come back to council with an approval. So either one of those is fine by staff.
Thank you. Is there any more questions? Councillor Foster and then the mayor.
I noticed in this report too, there is and actually I didn't say it in the last one, but I think there should be a time limit on here that says, we can revisit this in 6 months and make sure that it's working the way we want it to work, or I'd hate to see us get into a program that certainly doesn't work the way we speak about it. And I agree with Councillor Roy-DiClemente. I was thinking about the insurance implications and liability implications of those bins, because I too paid attention and seen a lot of those things happen in other places. So there are some things we need to look at here, I think, before we jump in.
The woman who died in the bin, I actually am connected to. And there's a lot more to that story than just putting up a textile bin, and it's not something that should ever stop us from putting up these bins. So I think we need to, if anyone wants to hear more about that, I'm happy to talk about it after the session, but I don't think it's a reason to not do the textile recycling. I hear your concerns, but there's a lot more to that story. So to speak to your concerns around insurance and if issues arise, I think it's standard practice that with any program, if issues arise, staff bring it back to us. Staff are very positive that this is something that is executable. General Manager Carmazan as well as General Manager Molinari have both discussed this and feel that it is doable. If issues arise, then we definitely will hear about it from them, as well as, we are looking at this as a pilot. Let's see how it goes and let's get a report back. And I think that that's something that could certainly be added to the recommendations to get a report back in a year. In discussions, we were saying it needs to be at least a year because we need to get people used to both the battery drop-off and the textile recycling, and it does take a year to change people's habits. And as we've said many times, if there's a problem, staff have assured us that they will bring it back to us. Did you have anything else to add?
Yes, if I may. It was a concern of the committee as well. We've all seen the abandoned bins or apparently abandoned bins with garbage all around them. What gave us confidence is that the backup of Diabetes Canada, whose image would be negatively impacted, and the fact that they've been doing this in other areas. There are a lot of organizations that are for-profit only and are putting bins to give the impression of charity, and they tend to be the ones that are most culpable of abandoning or not maintaining those. This is a fairly serious, large-scale program compared to some of those that we've seen. So definitely we should look into it. Definitely we should always revisit all these programs. And if there's a problem, we should be able to pull out. And hopefully the agreement that we have with the organization would allow us to do that if we were not happy with the service levels.
Thank you. So I'm confident, as is the committee, that staff can carry this forward and ensure that it goes off without any wrinkles, and will let us know if there is. Any further comments? Oh, sorry, the mayor. I'm very sorry.
Thank you. I've never been a bin fan. I see them in the community and they're ugly. And in many times they are misused. So I'm not a fan. I am concerned that these boxes are all going to be on our property. And as a result, if there's abuse, it's our staff that are going to have to deal with cleaning it up. So I am all for removing the amount of material that goes into our garbage. Well aware of it when I hear the numbers at the region that textiles are a huge problem. But I would really like to have a report back from staff before we approve it. Just to make sure that all the boxes are ticked before, rather than race into something and it's not good enough to come back if there is a problem. Let's anticipate a variety of opportunities when upfront, and then get all the material at that time.
Would you like to respond?
I can't disagree. I think it makes a lot of sense. But the organization guarantees us that they are the ones responsible if there are problems. The details, though, of the liabilities and insurance, I'm sure there's a complex agreement that I haven't seen, that the committee didn't see, that needs to be reviewed by staff.
Thank you very much. I do think that the bins that you were talking about give bins a bad name, the for-profit, the rusty ones with stuff all around them. But if you look at the bins that King Township has at their recreation complexes that have the diabetes logo on them, there's never stuff around it. They keep them nice. They're not rusty. They're painted very, very nice. And I think it certainly says a lot about how that community feels about their environment. And I think that these bins, when we eventually get them, they would say a lot about how our community feels about textile diversion and making sure that we're not putting stuff in the landfill that can be reused. So I have Councillor Crone next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to support this. I have a direct family member that has type 1 diabetes. And so anything we can do to support Diabetes Canada is a good thing. I think it's a good group of folks to affiliate ourselves with. I'm quite happy to have these bins because I know there are other bins out there that I put clothes into, and I don't know ultimately where the profits are going. If it's just a private enterprise or is it going to charity? It's always a little murky. So at least we have a better sense of where the money is going here. Secondly, I would suggest that if staff, once looking at this, at the implementation of it, if you have any serious concerns, I would say it's upon, my expectation would be that staff would bring it back to us and put up their hand and say, hey, we have some serious reservations, and then we can deal with it at that point. Otherwise, if they think it's fine, let's just proceed. I don't think we need to, throw too much red tape at this. And I would also suggest this is not in stone. So if we ever have any concerns with it, it can come back to council and we can deal with it then and there. I think that's the flexibility we have as council, but happy to support it.
Thank you. I think that I have a lot of trust and faith in staff that as they start to negotiate this, that any concerns would come to us right away. So we have two resolutions on the table, moved by Councillor Crone. One is to receive, the other is to direct staff to coordinate the implementation of the program with Diabetes Canada. And I have a show of hands, all in favor. Those opposed? And that motion fails. Would someone like to put another motion on the table? Go ahead, Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to put forward a motion that we receive the Environmental Advisory Committee report, that we endorse in principle the DCU's Textile Diversion Program, and direct staff to prepare a report back to us on an implementation plan.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Roy-DiClemente. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Stefan, for coming and presenting that to us. I'm going to turn this over to, first of all, I'm going to ask General Manager Molinari if you had anything else to add under CIES.
Nothing further at this time. Thank you.
And do members of the committee have any questions around CIES? Seeing none, I will turn the chair back to the mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're under item G, and that's Emergency and Community Safety Services with Councillor Roy-DiClemente in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The CIO Webster would like to speak, so I'll give you the
I
chair
missed
back.
that. I didn't see that out of the corner of my eye.
I normally don't, Madam Mayor, but I think it's important enough that while we're following this item, so our volunteer committees are highly valued, and Stefan's still here or not, but they're volunteering, they're not getting paid, and I think it's important that these folks get treated properly. And I think we're getting better at dealing with them. And quite frankly, our committees haven't come up with a lot of recommendations in the past. And generally what we do, we put them at the end of the agenda. I think normally they're put under other business, and somebody might have to wait quite a while to get it dealt with. So I think something new might have been tried here by putting it early in the agenda. But I think there was a couple of gaps. I think if there is going to be someone from the committee, we should probably have them listed on the agenda. That would be helpful. And in this instance here, I think both the initiatives are worthwhile. And I see two general managers here trying to be very accommodating. And but to my own mind as administrator, I'd like to know how many of these bins we're going to have, where they're going to be located, how they're going to be policed or monitored. And I think that's reasonable. And so in this instance, rather than turn it into a negative where we have a vote referred back, I'd like to make it a positive. I think that Mr. Molinari's group and working with CPRC, Mr. Karmazin's group, could bring back something very quickly that might show a logical rollout. So I think as we review our procedural bylaw, I would look to the clerk and our Mr. Horner to make sure that we address how committees, volunteer committees, are going to be handled in the future moving forward. Okay, so I thought it would be important just to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you. I also, and I don't know if it is too late, but to to say that we received their reports with thanks, because the committees did work very hard on it, and that's something that we don't normally do when it's our staff, but when it's a volunteer organization, we probably should be thanking them for being here and doing the work on that. Go ahead.
So on that note, I did want to introduce this next topic as well.
Please do.
So yeah, if you want to pass it to the chair, I'd request that.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have 2 items on our agenda this afternoon, and the first is a presentation on our emergency management program. And Mr. Webster, you indicated a wish to speak.
Okay. Sorry. We're good now. Thank you. So the Northern Six Initiatives, which is not a cult figure, but it's actually a group that works very closely with York Region, and it's something we're very proud of. We've been undertaking joint initiatives for over a dozen years, and one of the very first ones we actually did, and we still use, is the regional auditor. And the regional auditor provides audit services to the Northern Six municipalities, and rather than us all having an auditor on staff, we share an auditor for weeks of the year. And Chair Emerson's very aware of these initiatives. And another one that's more recent, and our Chief Mackenzie today is here with Laura James. And Laura is our new Emergency Management Coordinator of the Northern Six. She made a presentation recently at our N6 CAO's meeting, and it was so good I suggested we better get it here, and so that's part of the reason she's here. And I think it profiles some of these services that we do behind the scenes that maybe aren't visible to the public. I know putting out fires and rushing to motor vehicle collisions and stuff are the visible stuff happening, but the preparing for emergencies and making sure our organization, our town are well prepared is important. So on that note, I'll pass it over to Chief Mackenzie and Laura to do their joint presentation.
Thank you. And thank you, Chair. Your Honor, through you to the rest of Council, I appreciate that we take 10 minutes right now to turn our attention to emergency planning and emergency management. I'm going to co-present. I'm happy to co-present with Laura tonight or this afternoon. But just to start it off, the province of Ontario, through the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, mandates that each municipality plan for, the education, prevention, response, and the mitigation of disasters. But it also involves what we call large-scale events or significant events. So they dictate how each municipality gets ready for these disasters, and that falls to my desk as the Community Emergency Management Coordinator, the CEMC. In 2015, like the CEO indicated, 4 of the 6 fire departments in the N6 petitioned the region for help because the workload was becoming excessive and the skill level was becoming quite unique. So we petitioned the region for a person that could coordinate that. And we did a pilot project in 15 and it was successful. And then the following year, the remaining 2 fire departments jumped on board. So now we have the N6 Emergency Management Coordinator. So I'm going to just step back and let Laura just talk about what she does.
So, thank you very much, and through you. The chief wanted me to introduce myself a little bit just to let you know where I came from and what my experiences and background is. So I've been with the region now, thankfully, for the last 6 months, and I'm enjoying my time. But I came to the region from the City of Toronto's Office of Emergency Management, where I was for a number of years and had the I would say the pleasure of being there for a number of large-scale events that you will have all have heard of. The Toronto van attack, the Danforth shooting, the Toronto Island flood. So a number of large-scale events that I have had operational experience dealing with, and part of my portfolio at the City of Toronto was training and education. So bring together some unique experience, and along with providing expertise and advice to the N6 with respect to emergency management programs, I'm also here to help in the time of an emergency. If your emergency operations center is activated, I will certainly come and support your operations. Most recently in King, when they activated their EOC for the first time for the Schomburg fire, I was there to assist in their EOC operations. So that's a little bit about me. And so this pilot project was so successful, as the CAO and the chief has said, that the N6 signed an MOU in January of 2019 through to 2022. So I will be here to assist in the implementation of your programs between now and then. And that includes providing synergies and templates for all of the N6 so that we're all sort of doing like for like with respect to what your emergency management programs look like. Understanding that each municipality has unique challenges and different communities. But with respect to emergency management, there's a lot of things that should be standard for response. And so that's what we're working on together, the chief and I. So just a little bit of background. We're not making this stuff up. At all levels of government in Canada, there are responsibilities for emergency management. So at the federal level, there's two pieces of legislation, the Emergencies Act and the Emergency Management Act, that outline what the federal government can do when there is an emergency. And basically that has to do with public safety and security, ensuring public safety and security. And the federal government categorizes emergencies in 4 different categories, and we hear those a lot of the time in the news. That's public welfare, public order, international war emergencies. So that's when we know the federal government would use martial law to put in curfews and stop price gouging, et cetera, if there was an emergency. So that's at the federal level. We call sort of formula behind this that is provided to us by the province that we use, and it looks at frequency of the event, the consequence of the event, and kind of the likelihood of it happening, and the impact to your municipality. Obviously, if it impacts a lot of residents versus fewer residents, we're looking at less of an impact. So we do this together in coordination, and this was your 2019 HIRA that we did in partnership. And I would sort of stress that you don't really need to look at the numbers. What we like to think of is, the top 10 are the things that we're planning for annually, and we like to think about them, keep them all top of mind. And the other thing to sort of keep in mind is this is subjective to the people at the table when we have these discussions. It's not an exact science. So every year, the HIRA flexes a little bit depending on what's happened sort of around us. If there's been tornadoes around us or a cyber attack in a local municipality, then you'll see some of those things float to the top. But I think the chief wanted to highlight today that cyber attack, crowd disaster, and active threat are things that are sort of coming up into the HIRA in all of our municipalities in recent years. The other thing that we do annually is a critical infrastructure scan, and of what the critical infrastructure is in our region and local municipalities. Again, part of our annual compliance required by the province. There are 9 sectors of critical infrastructure that the province needs us to sort on and see if we have within our local municipalities. And so that's food and water, telecommunications, electrical, gas and oil suppliers, financial institutions, public transportation, healthcare, government, and public safety. And as the chief sort of alluded to earlier, it's really a coordinated effort because, as you can see, there's private, public, and regional and local infrastructure holders here. So it's really a coordinated effort on our part. This year, we had a pilot project for 2019 that we hope to carry forward. I'm sure you can imagine that as information changes and we become better at processing information, we're looking to a dedicated data set and source using geographic information. And to date, we've had multiple data sets in multiple municipalities. And sort of one of the things that we're working on is pulling together all of that critical infrastructure into a single layer, so that if we activated our emergency operations centers, we could pull up a single data set with all of this information in it versus loading up multiple data sets. And so that was a great pilot in 2019, and we'll carry that forward in the next few years.
Great. And when we look at the exercise, earlier in the year in May, the town partnered with the region for exercise wind tunnel, where we warmed up the emergency operations center and carried on. During the week of the first week of May, I guess it is, the province always has emergency preparedness week. So we did our part. We had a social media campaign, and we worked with the region and the police as part of their open house to spread the word, to provide information. We also, in the fall, many of you attended our open house in September at the Queensville station. During that event, we had a number of partners or collaborators that were there providing information, not just for fire prevention, but for emergency preparedness. And then later in the year, last year in November, a lot of the staff from the senior staff attended a conference held by the region on climate change. So what's new and coming up is also the JOC, a portion of the JOC will house the new or the primary emergency operations center. So we're working with Mr. Cameron's people to design and to ensure that we have a quality emergency operations center there. It's just a rendition there of what it may look like. This operations center will also double as a training center for all staff. And I'll stop.
Okay, so the fun things to come in 2020. The town has had the incident management system in your emergency operations center for a couple of years now, number of years. So this incident management response structure is not new to you folks. And what has been done in the past is annual training around the basics of IMS and how it would work in the EOC here for the town. And what the chief and I are going to do this year is really drill down on building competency for each of the functions within this IMS structure. And so what I'm going to do is break this out into half-day training for each functions under this IMS structure, so that we can really work together as either the planning section, operations, logistics, talk about what is required in each function under that IMS structure, and then how we activate that within the town, and pull together a couple of scenarios and have some really detailed discussions about how it would work versus an overview training. And what I'm looking at is building competency over the years for staff to feel comfortable in their role and have flexibility perhaps in supporting others in their role, and really understanding this response structure. And again, as we build synergies across the region, that will allow folks who are trained in all of our N6 municipalities to possibly support other EOCs if we need to. If our friends around us have an activated EOC and we've got well-trained staff and functions, then we can look to that in the future. Our annual exercise for East Gwillimbury is coming up April 1st of this year, April Fool's Day. And we're going to work together with Georgina this year. So that function-specific training that I just spoke about, we're going to work with Georgina. And so Georgina's planning section staff will train with the town of East Gwillimbury's planning section staff, and then we're going to exercise our EOCs simultaneously on April 1st and see how that all comes together for us. As we said, we're going to update the plan and bylaw, bring that back to you in Q2. A number of the N6, including you folks, have requested some guidance on crisis communications outside of sort of regular corporate crisis communications, but what's the specific messaging that we may need to come out of the EOC if the EOC is activated? And so with the region taking the lead on this, we're going to look to a workshop in Q2 for communications staff, as well as CEMCs, so fire chiefs, and some critical infrastructure holders within the region to look at crafting some templates for crisis communications when our EOCs are activated, so they're not scrambling to put together those basic key messages for folks. And we wanted to mention that the town works very closely with the region, providing information to the corporate risk assessment program, which is updated annually, and we'll be looking to updates to business continuity program shortly as well. And then another exciting thing that I think most of you are aware of is that the region is partnering with York Region Police, specifically Sergeant Doug Ritchie, to bring active attacker threat training to the town. And I think our first day of that is a full day training on Thursday. We'll be having 2 sessions, one in the morning and one in the afternoon for staff. Another 2 sessions will run the second week of February, I believe. And those are workshop sessions. They'll be led by Doug. And then we'll come back to the town and run some drills around that specific training. The other thing that we're doing sort of in partnership is having a look at the existing plans and procedures around bomb threats, active attackers, and those plans that already exist here in the town, and pulling some synergies together around what that means once we've had this active attacker run, hide, defend training.
Great. So just in wrap up, we will link it to the strategic priorities. And if there are any questions of Laura and I, we'd be glad to take them.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Ms. James. I think I speak for all of us when I say that you've instilled in us a sense of confidence, and this sort of thing can certainly instill some be concern of the intimidation factor, I think, is high, and the anxiety factor is always there and present. And, through the media, even just this weekend, we've seen, for example, the events in Newfoundland and where, we hope we never, ever have to use these plans, but it's reassuring to know that they're in place. So with that, members of committee, any questions? Councillor Prizzacchini.
Thank you, Chair. Very good informative information. Just wanted to ask, way back when I was in the police service in 2005, I think it was, we had a little pamphlet that we gave out, the region and the police to the community. Do we have such a thing like when this is all done for training for the public? And we're talking about, preparedness, emergency preparedness for the public.
We do. So the region prepares an emergency preparedness guide that's available to the public. I mean, we really push that during the first week of May annually, but it's available anytime. Anytime there's a fire open house, those products are available.
Seeing no other questions, may I have a motion to receive the presentation? Moved by Councillor Foster. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you again. So the next item on our agenda is a memorandum from Emergency and Community Safety Services on toys for tickets, and it's an update from staff. Chief, did you want to cue this one up?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to say if there are any questions or comments that Jennifer Nichols is in the audience, she can answer them.
Looks like it speaks for itself, Ms. Nichols. May I have a motion to receive the memorandum? Moved by Councillor Crone. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Any other items to raise under this area? None for you, Chief. Members of committee, anything? Seeing nothing, I'll turn the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We're under item H, and that's Development Services with Councillor Crone in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have 2 items on the agenda today. First one is Development Services Planning Branch Report B 2020-02 on the B School and Bay request for a minister's zoning order to permit an auto campus at 1656 Green Lane East. And this has a few parts to it. We're going to be asking for a minister's zoning order to permit an auto campus at 1656 Green Lane East be received. I'm going to ask that Council endorse the use of the minister's zoning order to zone the subject lands. We're going to ask that that report be sent to Regional Council, Municipality of York for information purposes, and that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing as a statement of Council's request. Mr. Ramuno, can I hand that over to you to elaborate?
Certainly, through you, Chair Crone. So I think this is exciting for the municipality. Council will recall back in December, just this past December 2019, Margot provided a presentation to Council on the economic benefits of the auto campus. Mr. Croxon was here as well, and he presented to Council with respect to his plans for the auto campus. So the purpose of the report, as Councillor Crowe mentioned, is to see Council's endorsement of a minister's zoning order, which will essentially, once Council considers it and sent off to the minister, will implement the zoning to permit the auto mall, which again aligns with the current official plan, and will also align and conform with our current employment secondary plan that we're underway. We're right now in the middle of that. We're hoping to have that completed by the end of the year, but it will outline and organize land uses that are employment related, and one of those would also would obviously be the auto mall. What the zoning, and we've attached a copy of the draft zoning order for Council's consideration, but the purpose there is to send that as a template to the minister. And if you read that, not only is it specifically asking for the auto mall use, but it will also provide the parent M2 industrial general zoning as the underlying zoning in place as well. So again, this the benefits here. This would provide a catalyst for the employment area. It'll be the commencement of the business park just north of Green Lane. Generate a number of hundreds of jobs. There are economic benefits as well with respect to development charges, tax revenue, The other thing is it also aligns and conforms with the provincial objectives. Recently released Bill 66 with respect to the province's goal to have municipalities diversify their economic base and also plan for a range of economic and employment opportunities. I think this proposal does just that.
Thank you, Mr. Ramuno. Could I have a mover for all this? Moved by Councillor Persichini. Are there any questions? Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Ramuno, during the presentation that we had, I think at our last CWC, there was some discussion of a training facility and the ability to partner with local institutions that are providing much needed specific training for some of the folks that would be working here. Does this M2 zone allow for sort of office and training facilities to also be included and not just the motor vehicle servicing?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Good question. And yes, it does. Mr. Croxton did mention that that's also a goal of the development of Auto Campus. A training facility office would be associated use within the Auto Campus use, but the underlying M2 zone does permit specifically, office type uses. So yes, those uses would be in effect once the minister establishes that zoning order.
So the training component of this application could be done under the M2 zone?
Yes, and yes, it would.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, I believe Councillor Persichini raised the question about a hotel or a trade and convention center or anything of that. Would that be permitted under this use as well? Or does that need to be more explicit?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Under our current I've got a copy of our M2 zoning here. It is the most expansive M2 zone with respect to the number of different uses. A trade and convention center and hotel, specifically a hotel, currently aren't permitted in that M2 zone. But just one thing to keep in mind as we move forward with the employment secondary plan area, and once we bring that forward for adoption, our next step would also to bring forward whether it's developer driven or staff and council, is to bring forward the up-to-date zoning for the new secondary plan, 404 secondary plan. So over time that will happen. I think Mr. Croxton's plan here, the next step, once the zoning order is put in place, he will come in with a site plan for the first phase of the Auto Campus development, and that would be a technical review that obviously the region and council would be, it'll be submitted to council for your final consideration. But moving forward, I'm thinking once we complete our secondary plan, we'll turn our minds to updating or harmonizing the zoning for the new designations within the 404 employment secondary plan area.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Ramuno. I'm really excited about this opportunity, and I think it ticks a lot of boxes for us. We want these jobs. We want that diversification of our local economy. What I will say is I'm happy to support this and the request for the minister's zoning order, but I want to make sure that this isn't at the expense of appealing streetscapes and architectural control. And so when that site plan comes to us, I'm looking forward to having my socks knocked off. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the warning. Are there any other questions? Mayor Haxon.
Not a question, just a comment. I think that this area is well suited for what we have in front of us today. The fact that our presentation before Christmas talked about Georgian College and training young people in automotive sticks very strongly in my mind of the kinds of things that as we move forward, that's exactly what we need to do. We may not have a university, but we have the ability to train our young people and they don't have to go out of our community. So I'm looking forward to this and certainly hope that this is well received at the minister's office.
For myself personally, I'm very happy to support this. I think it's, as Councillor Roy-DiClemente said, it ticks a lot of boxes. This is going to be a beautiful new development there. It could have gone the other way. We could have had an ugly development that could have been a warehouse, could have been something that we really didn't like. But this is very fortunate. Getting some good development charges. We're getting expanding our commercial tax base, which is something that I'm very keen on. And we're going to have 400 to 500 jobs in the community, and I think it's going to be a wonderful catalyst for future economic growth. So I think it's all a good news story. The one thing I will say, and I'm putting it on public record now, I know it's a pet peeve of mine and some of us up here in council, I want to see this place advertised as being in East Gwillimbury, not Newmarket. No offense to Newmarket, but this is an EG, and I know I get a little cranked up when I see other stores and developments saying that they're in Newmarket when they're in EG. So let's be a little proud of where we're from and remind them of that. So I'll get off my soapbox. Any other questions? Last call. Okay, all in favor? None opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Move on to the second item on our agenda. Development Services Planning Branch Report, P2020-03, request for street name endorsement by Sharon Vitt Estates, phase 3. Mr. Ramuno, could you bring us up to speed on this, please?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. So this is a standard report seeking council's endorsement of street names for the next phase of the Sharon Vitt Estates. If you recall, this phase was approved by LPAT late last year for 70 units, a mix of singles and some townhomes. If council allows, the 3 names that have been brought forward by the developer do come from our previously approved, council-approved bank street names. However, just yesterday, I did hear from a couple members of council, and I did take another look at the 2 names in particular. So the 3 names that are put forth, Viola Street, Tannery Barn Street, and Upper Landing Lane. Viola Street, obviously, I don't think we have an issue with that, but Tannery Barn Street and Upper Landing, I think upon further review, they were probably really more meant for, specifically Upper Landing is probably should be reserved for a future street in community of Holland Landing. So I did reach out to the developer, and if council allows, I want to put forward 2 optional names to replace Tannery Barn and Upper Landing Lane, and they would be Verbena Street to replace Tannery Barn and Morton Stables Lane to replace Upper Landing Lane. Again, they come from our existing street name list, and they've been vetted by the developer and through our emergency services. So again, we'll keep Viola Street and replace Tannery Barn Street with Verbena Street, and Upper Landing Lane be replaced with Morton Stables Lane. And again, my apologies. There is a sense of urgency that we're working with the developer to execute the subdivision agreement, and we do need these street names to finalize that agreement.
Mr. Clerk, do we need to reflect those name changes in the motion that we haven't made yet?
Through Mr. Chair, yes, because the appendix is attached to the report, so you're receiving the report essentially. So the resolution, if committee does want to change the names, should reflect received as amended, and we can add the updated names on the appendix sheet and republish the report after the meeting.
Okay, so let's first get a motion to accept this as amended. Who would like to move that? Mayor Haxon? Any questions? And Mayor Haxon, I think you had a question first.
Thank you. Could you repeat the name that is replacing Tannery Barns Street, please?
That would be Verbena Street, Verbena, Verbena Street.
I'm wondering if the other one is Morton Stable. Morton Stables has been in Sharon a long time and very well recognized on Leslie Street. The one that you are replacing, Upper Landing, is Morton Stables, which is really a lane, is it not? Perhaps we could switch those two and have Morton Stables on the street that has frontages of the homes. And the other one would be the replacement for Upper Landing Lane. Just a suggestion.
I don't see an issue at our end with that.
Councillor Morton?
What is the significance of Viola Street and Verbena Street? What is the significance of those names?
So you, Mr. Chair, and we do have to bring that street name policy back to council at a future workshop. We're now going through some of the history of these names. As far as we can tell, both Viola and Verbena were just offered, and they're really based on their vegetation plants. So based on my understanding, I don't believe they were named after an individual or a prominent figure in town. I think they were just offered up at one time. And again, the meaning of both of those names are plant related.
I'm not saying that the plants don't have nice names. I do know what they are, and they're lovely plants. But we have so many names on that list that I think, and really, really important people from our community, that I just feel that there are more names on there that we can recognize and remember by using those names. So for me, I can't support the names on this.
Okay. Councillor Roy-DiClemente, you had a question?
It was more of a comment. For me, I would prefer to see Morton Stables Drive be a little bit closer to where the actual stables is. I know that there are some future plans further to the south, and some. I think it deserves more of a name of prominence, whether it's a lane or whether it's in a block of 4 townhouses. I don't think it's given the prominence that it deserves. And Verbena and Viola are absolutely fine. I might suggest, I have the list here, I might suggest another one of the horticultural names like Monarda or Celosia or something like that, that would sort of create a little neighborhood there that's floral, although given that there's a lot of houses there, there probably aren't going to be that many flowers, but maybe we can at least give them the image of flowers on their street signs. Just a thought.
Councillor Carruthers, you had a question.
Thank you. When I was on the school board and we had to name schools, there was a lot of debate over school names and a lot of time put into a robust policy on how to go about naming schools. And, we're naming a lot more streets than the board ever named schools. But I would like to see a little bit more rationale going forward. And I know Mr. Ramuno has identified that, the need to update our list, update our protocol on how we come up with the names on the list. And I think it's important. I agree with Councillor Morton about naming after people, but I think this has come up quickly, and we really do need that background on who these people are that are on the list, where they live, so we can get a street that's close to them, close to where they lived, et cetera. So I think that in addition to probably purging our list a little bit of some inappropriate names, we probably need to beef it up with some rationale and some geographic locations of the suggestion for some of the other names. I think it would be a great research opportunity for a student during the summer to dig into that list and add some context for us. So I appreciate that this is rushed, and I agree with Councillor Roy-DiClemente that the 3rd Street should be one of the other horticultural names. Thank you.
Councillor Foster, you had a question or comment?
Councillor Carruthers just took a little bit of my thunder there, but that's good. I remember sitting here not too long ago, and we talked at this table, Councillor Carruthers and I think Councillor Roy-DiClemente at the time, about coming up with a little bit more rationale as to how we chose names, first of all, put on the list and where they went. brought up a couple of points myself, and I have to tell you, I was sitting here loaded, ready for not an argument, but maybe a history lesson on the upper landing part. That one drove me crazy when I read it, and it said staff reviewed and were satisfied. So is there a specific protocol that could be added to what Councillor Carruthers already said to, I guess, enhance the history part of it and all the rest of the significance that goes along with that? I'm not sure that there's a specific protocol that you follow now, but maybe there's something that we should be looking into.
Mr. Ramuno, you've heard some feedback here. What do you make of all this?
All good points. I think, as was mentioned, we do have to bring that back, and we'll try and bring that back sooner rather than later. Staff are already doing some investigation. With respect to this one, I understand that we need to come up with a third name. This won't be ratified until next week at council. And I don't want to take any more time. So I will then provide an updated memo for council with the third name, hopefully for council's final consideration. And, we'll take a look and speak to the developer and come up with a third name that is more appropriate with and associated with Verbena and Viola.
Mayor Haxon, it was your motion. Are you fine with that?
Thank you, I am.
Okay. All right. So let's, are there any other questions? Okay. Always good. Let's have a vote then. All in favor? None opposed? Motion is carried. Are there any further updates from you, Mr. Ramuno, that you'd like to share with committee?
Nothing further at this time.
Sorry, my apologies. Councillor Morton opposed that vote. Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Ramuno. You
nothing further, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions from committee to Mr. Ramuno? Seeing none, I hand the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We're under Community Parks, Recreation and Culture with Councillor Persicini in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two reports. First one is Community Park Recs and Culture Memo, CPRC, page 63 to 69 you have in front of you. Recreation Special Events. General Manager Carmazin, do you have any comments on this?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just a few highlights in relation to this update report. Pleased to report continued growth in our recreation area with program participation and revenue up by 18%. We hosted over 20 special events last year, approximately 19,000 residents and visitors attending, including our first Tapestry at Taste Festival, successful launch of our Fair EG program, providing subsidies to 11 families and 22 residents, successful first year for our Engaged EG volunteer program, registering 50 new active and engaged volunteers, and growth in our sponsorship support area, growing partnerships from 21 separate partners to over 39 partners in 2019. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Mayor?
Thank you. I just wanted to congratulate staff on this is remarkable, having the increase in numbers that we have. We have increased residents, and it makes sense that they are now participating in a lot of our programs. I think it takes a couple of years for people to feel like this is home, and you can tell now by the numbers that they are participating and being a part of the community. I often worry about some of our older people, our seniors, and I even break seniors into younger seniors, middle seniors, and older seniors. We want to keep them busy and active in the community, and we know that that's good for their health, but sometimes they just don't have the finances available. Could you just outline for us again how we deal with those individuals that want to participate, but they're trying to stretch their dollar?
Go ahead, General Manager.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we outreach to seniors in a number of different ways. In particular, are with our stakeholders, our seniors group. As an example, in Mount Albert, the Friendship Circle, in Holland Landing, the Golden Anchor Seniors, and then most recently our Seniors Task Force, which is fairly centrally located throughout town in Sharon and draws in from all our communities. So we do actively work with those groups as well as our seniors programming staff. So our adults and seniors coordinator that has a grassroots connection to those groups as well. We do advertise quite extensively through our guide or seniors programming. We are proposing in 2020 to run for a year 2 cycles with both our sessions is a Fair EG for Seniors program that would advertise specifically and target seniors that may require a subsidy. And we would offer a familiar, comfortable, confidential face with being our seniors coordinator to work with those seniors that may have some barriers to recreational opportunities. And we would seek to provide assistance through that approach for the year.
Go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm assuming that as we advertise, because it is something new, that we'll really give it a lot of airtime to make sure that people are well aware of those advantages that they may have. The difficulty we have, and we've talked about it in the past, that many of the people that would be participating in those programs that you're referring to, that we will be able to help them get involved with it, are not online. And so it's newspaper and it's handout and it's word of mouth and all those kinds of good things that work for them. So I just remind staff, I'm sure that that you already know this, but more and more as we're out in the community, we find that there is a certain age bracket. However, there are some that are quite active on Facebook and some other things. The majority are still looking for print material in the newspaper, a flyer, a handout, and of course, word of mouth is better than anything. Thank you.
Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to follow up on some of the mayor's comments because I'm very concerned about the seniors as well. Mr. Karmazin, through Mr. Chair to Mr. Karmazin, we've had discussions about this offline as well. I know, there are seniors out there that have indicated to me that they're not happy with, we took some price increases, and I understand all the reasons why we had to do that. But some seniors have spoken to me about it and expressed their concern about the increase, and I've indicated that they have options available to them to help reduce the prices, and I've told very bluntly, not going to happen. They will not ask for a subsidy. Not everyone says that, but it's out there, and I don't know if it's a generational thing, if it's a pride thing. I know we're not asking them to do a means test or anything like that, but I'm wondering if have you looked at alternate solutions or tried different pilots to see what the take up is in both, could you, I just want to make sure that the seniors are having all the access to our programs that they can. And I'm wondering if we're creating barriers to some seniors by throwing up saying that you have a subsidy available, but knowing that they just might not take it.
General Manager, comments.
Your thoughts?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are working with our counterparts with the region and also taking a look at their senior strategy. And in 2016, there was a senior strategy that was published with data indicating that that many seniors did have discretionary income, but there was still a subset of seniors within the seniors population that did require fee assistance. And the region's recommendation at that time, back in 16, and it still holds true today with a number of different programs across the region, is to, as a first step, try to offer some type of a subsidy based geared towards income or finances of the seniors population as a first step. In addition to that, we do have some no charge drop-in programs that we do also offer in each of our communities, namely in Mount Albert and Holland Landing with the Golden Anchor Seniors, and the Friendship Club, as well as some drop-in walking programs and other programs that do run at no charge for seniors with the Seniors Task Force here in Sharon at the sports complex. So I think we are trying to provide a myriad of options for our seniors, and this is just one more, for lack of a better term, arrow in our quiver that we're going to offer up to try to get more seniors out and active and engaged.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Carruthers?
Thank you. How is the Healthy Active Living Guide distributed? It said that it was distributed. Just wondering how are we getting it out?
General Manager Carmison?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we distribute in a couple of different ways. We distribute through the EG Express as an insert. We also, in some of the newer communities that do not receive the Express, we print a postcard that allows them to be aware that the guide has been released. It's available online, and as well, it's available at all of our community centers, our staff community centers.
Okay, thank you. My concern was around the new residents, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Just want to comment too. I did last meeting with General Manager Carmison. We did discuss a lot of the issues about the different rates in how we do our operation, and we're in good hands according to what we talked about. Things are going to look good for the future for us, and we are in business to stay in business, and we can only do so much, and we don't want to, at the end of the day, lose money. And also, we don't want to make money. We want to serve as a community. We're on the right track, and look at the next 3 to 5 years. So I'm very pleased to see that the revenue has gone up, and doing a good job with your staff. So thank you to all of them. Can I have a motion to receive this? Councillor Morton, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we have another item. Second items here is Community Park and Recs Culture CPRC 2020-01 field permit fees from page 70 to 77. You have it in front of you. General Manager Carmison, do you have any comments on this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is a report on the phasing in of permit fees for outdoor soccer and baseball sporting fields. This process did involve very extensive outreach and consultation with our soccer and baseball user groups. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, can I have a mover first? No. Councillor Roy-DiClemente. Okay, moved by Councillor Roy-DiClemente. Any questions from the committees? If I see none, I have a motion. Call a motion to approve. All in favor? Okay, great motions. Any other questions or any comments? If you don't, General Manager Carmison, do you have any other information do you want to bring forth?
Nothing further, thank you.
Back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We're under Corporate Services with Councillor Morton in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We don't actually have anything on the agenda today, but Mr. Valchich, I understand that you have something you want brought forward.
Madam Chair, with your permission, just one verbal update from our Director of Communications.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I just wanted to provide a brief update about the Year in Review newsletter that was sent out to Council last Friday. So it is available online and has been distributed at the Pancake Breakfast. I just wanted to provide an update to let you know that it has not been mailed out to all residents, that we did receive varying feedback about the newsletter, and so we're actually going to take a look at that and bring back at a future meeting Council some options for moving forward.
Any questions? Hearing none. Do any members of council have questions for Mr. Valchich? Hearing none. I'll turn the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We're under administration with myself in the chair. We do not have any reports at this time. Mr. Webster, do we have anything to bring forward?
Not at this time, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions under administration? Seeing none, I will move along to item L, and that's legal and council support services with Councillor Foster in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We just have one item on the agenda, a memorandum cannabis legal update. Mr. Horner, any comments?
Just briefly, as a result of regulatory changes at the province, there was some liberalization of the cannabis retail sales market that occurred effective this year. And we just wanted to bring that to council's attention and answer any questions that you have, and otherwise hope you find the memo helpful or useful.
Thank you. Can I have a mover? We are just going to receive this. Councillor Crone. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, we can have a vote. All in favor? And that would be carried. Mr. Horner, anything further?
Nothing at this time, Mr. Chair.
So I believe we can pass it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We're under item M, and that's Budget Committee with myself in the chair, and we have in front of us the 2020 proposed water and wastewater budget. Mr. Belcher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you recall, in late December 2019, Council approved the majority of the budget components. There were three large pieces of our budget that were approved at that time. The operating budget, which is predominantly tax funded, our development and fee supported portion of the budget, which is predominantly supported through the charging of various fees for development applications and the like. And the capital budget for 2020 was also approved in December. So at this point, there's one component remaining. It's the 2020 water and wastewater portion of the budget. And with your permission, our Director of Finance, Mr. Marshall, would like to provide a brief presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of committee. As the General Manager indicated, our 2020 proposed budget came in at about $49 million. In December of last year, Council approved three of the four components of the budget. Today's discussion will focus on the water and wastewater budget component, which is tabled at $9.3 million, which is about a $900,000 increase from the previous year. So today I'm going to go through a bit of a discussion regarding the pressures on the 2020 budget. The Director of Operations is here, and he'll talk about some of the work that they've been doing on non-revenue water, and in particular the water loss program. We'll go through the proposed 2020 rates, and we'll compare those rates to the 2016 financial plan that was approved by Council. So the costs associated with the region of York providing water and wastewater services to the town equate to about $6 million of our $9.3 million operating program, which is about 2/3. In 2020, the region has proposed another 9% overall increase to their rates, which if you add it to our look at our budget, it adds about a $500,000 pressure to the town's budget, which is a bit more than half of the overall budget pressure for 2020. And if you look at the increase in supply that we are going to need to service new residents, the actual pressure on the budget associated with York Region water and sewer supply is about 80% of the budget pressure for 2020. The other pressure, the other components of the pressure for 2020 include salary and benefit increases and increase to the cost of maintenance of our system. So that makes up the total of our budget pressure for 2020. So with this, I'll hand it over to the Director of Operations to talk about the water loss program.
I'll make that. Thanks, Warren. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, member of council. I'm pleased to provide council with some context about our water loss program that we're undertaking at this time. I'll go through a little bit of the history about our water loss program and how we got there from several years ago. Each year when our finance department sets the water rates, they consult with the operational group about our operational and our capital needs. One of the tools that we use in the operations department to evaluate our system performance is a software. Councillor Morton, my apologies. It's from the AWWA. It's called the Water Balance Software. And this tool is used to calculate the volume of water that's considered non-revenue water. And non-revenue water is just what it sounds like. It's water that we don't generate revenue from. However, it's essential to the operation of the system, or it's water that's actually lost. So when we calculate the water rates, this volume of water has to be incorporated into the water rates as an operational cost. Across the country, we've got averages that range from about 6% up to about 25% non-revenue water. Some of the examples of non-revenue water from an operational perspective, flushing our water mains, we've got leaks. The leaks that actually come to the surface, we call them water main breaks. And then we've got other leaks that disappear into the ground. We never see those. So that's an interesting one to try to find. There are ways to find that, and we'll talk about that later. Firefighting, uses of water that obviously large quantities of water. We've got operational flushing of our mains. So we have to do that for aesthetics and also for regulatory compliance. Meter inaccuracies. So our water meters and also the meters that the region uses to bill us. So those inaccuracies are built into this non-revenue water. And finally, theft. It's not a big number, but we do have a number in there for theft. Historically, East Gwillimbury's been at the high end of that 25%. And several years ago, we were actually exceeded 25%. And this was the Young Green Lane system where we had extensive and continuous flushing to meet regulatory requirements of the drinking water system in that area. In approximately 2017, York Region resolved that problem by putting in a chlorine booster in the Aurora pumping station. So in 2018, when we did our water balance calculations, we expected to see, significant improvements. We saw some improvements; they weren't significant. It wasn't the smoking gun that we were looking for. So at that point, staff felt it was prudent to undertake a water loss program, and that project was approved by council last year. Last year, staff retained a consultant to begin that process. We looked at the billing volumes, both from a regional perspective, a town perspective. We looked at operational volumes, again, from region and town. And we compared those on a geographic area and for the same period of time. That's important because we don't currently do that. And typically, we didn't do that on a historic basis. So that was something our consultant worked on. We do have some preliminary information from that report. Unfortunately, it's generated more questions than provided answers. So this year, we're planning on putting a task force together with our regional counterparts and looking into these water volume anomalies. We expect we can probably have the task force put together in the next 2 or 3 weeks and have an update for council before the end of Q2 with an action plan to identify and start working on resolving this non-revenue water. So that's the end of my brief presentation. I'll hand it back over to finance unless council has some questions on this part of the presentation.
Thank you. Water loss.
Yeah, water loss.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, I'm just wondering if just for the flow of the presentation, because there's only a couple other slides, if perhaps Mr. Marshall could finish that and then take questions on any parts of the presentation. It just might be a little easier on the presenters, that's all.
I think that's a grand idea.
Well, I'll continue on with the proposed rates for 2020, and we've proposed to freeze the rates at the 2019 levels for couple of reasons. One, to get the results of the work that the operations group is working on. And we're planning on undertaking a water financial plan, which would help guide the rates as well. The impact of freezing the rates, though, is a slight decrease to the contribution to the reserves that we have been making over the past few years, but we feel we can adjust for it once we get the information from the other studies. So in 2016, the town approved a water financial plan that was required to be undertaken that showed that is to demonstrate the town's sustainability of its operations, and sustainability not only includes operations but eventual replacement of assets. So the rates that were approved under this plan in 2016 are in the black type, and the rates that were actually enacted by council over various budget periods are in red. So for the delivery or fixed charge, the financial plan proposed about an 80% increase to the rates from 2016, and in actuality, we've imposed about 30% of that increase. And for the usage, it was more modest in terms of an increase from 2016, about 12%, and we have included about 5% of that increase, of that 12%, in our rates. So what that does is, to the average homeowner, we've imposed about a 4% increase per year through this time period. So in 2020, we're proposing to update this financial plan and bring it to council. We're hoping to bring it in Q3 or by Q3 of 2020 with rates that have been recalibrated based on actual events that have taken place. So next steps, staff are here to answer any questions regarding the operating and capital budgets. And if committee is satisfied with those budgets, we would humbly suggest that that committee recommend that the budget get moved to council for approval on February 4th, 2020. With that,
thank you.
For any questions.
Questions? Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to see us holding the rate until we figure out about the water loss. I think that water conservation is so important because it keeps down a lot of the costs that are generated by the town if people can do more to conserve. This came up at the last Environmental Advisory Committee meeting, and people talked about the difference between the fixed rate and the usage rate, and felt very strongly that the fixed rate needs to be lower and the usage rate needs to be higher in order to convince people to conserve. If there's a dollar attached to it, then people seem more inclined to do something about it. Just we see that with the 5 cents on a grocery bag, people are willing to forgo their bag, which helps the environment for the nickel they save. And I also think that, you know, if they're seeing their bills are high because they're using over the fixed usage, I think we can see people starting to do some conservation there too. The other thing that the committee suggested was monthly billing for water. Now that we don't have to read the meters house by house, we would like to see, the committee would like to see monthly billing, because they also felt that if residents saw their water bill on a month by month basis, they'd have a better idea of where they went wrong. When a bill is high and they remember, oh yeah, I left the hose on, or I had a toilet that was running on, or whatever the issue might be. When they wait 3 months, it's hard to think back, what happened 3 months ago that has caused my water bill to be high? So do we have plans to be looking at monthly billing?
Through you, Madam Mayor. We do have plans. With the rollout of the meter replacement program, we'll be able to read the meters more frequently and easier. And we're putting our systems in place to adjust for that as well. So hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be in a position to start rolling out monthly billing in 2020.
Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I don't know if this is a question for you, Mr. Marshall, or for Mr. Hollett, but back in March of 2019, we approved a budget, and we approved a budget with a capital project, which is a water loss control program, subject to a follow-up report to council detailing the volume and type of loss being experienced, the reasons for those losses, and the steps being taken to resolve issues identified. And that was 10 months ago, and we haven't received a report, and we're now being asked to approve another budget. And I'm a little concerned, quite frankly, that we haven't even really detailed it. As I recall, the issue, Mr. Hollett told us last year that the average across municipalities was, I think it was up to 10 or 15%, and yet we've been experiencing, as I understand it anecdotally, because I don't have a report to point to, that we've been seeing losses that are double that. And frankly, if I filled my gas tank up in my car one night and then the next morning I went out and a quarter of it's gone, I'd be a little concerned. And so I don't want to hold things up. I'm happy that we're not adopting an increase. I don't want to hold up billing, but I have to suggest that we've got a serious issue here that's not being addressed adequately. And I'd like to see what can be done about that.
Mr. Webster.
As administrator, I concur. I think the level of energy and effort to this initiative was not adequate. And that's why we're here in front of you. And let me assure you, we're going to raise it. And we've got good senior staff here. We feel by working collaboratively with the region is the appropriate way to go. I can tell a little bit of a story from York Region, if I may. Warren Marshall knows it quite well. But through a number of municipalities over the years, there's been the question of the adequacy and accuracy of the regional meters. And it's been quite frequent that municipalities get into disputes with the region, often to the tunes of many millions of dollars over this type of dispute. And rather than make it into a dispute, we would sooner identify the problems. We know in some of our newer areas, for instance, and I've been briefed by staff, we're having inordinate difference from what the region is billing us to what we're charging the end consumer. And we feel those systems should be maybe some of our tightest systems. It's new construction. All new meters have been put in place. So we have some areas we can take a look at. And I know that Mr. Molinari's group and Larry Holt have already been working diligently on identifying some of these areas of water loss. Another one that comes to mind is the amount of water parks. We are a leader in Ontario with the amount of water parks that we put into our municipal facilities. A lot of them have maybe one, and it's quite frequent that we have quite a few in our system. And even the point of, is that water being properly accounted for that's used in those facilities? So I would ask council to, that we are committed to bringing back a report. I think we're looking at the end of Q2 for at least an update on where we're heading. And I think the fact that we're putting a new financial plan in place is well advised as well. So, thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure if you have a motion on the floor, Madam Mayor, but if we're going to be doing a motion, I'd prefer that, or I'd like to request that we add a resolution and that Budget Committee direct staff to prepare a report to council detailing the volume and type of loss being experienced, the reasons for those losses, and the steps being taken to resolve issues identified on March 24th, 2020 or sooner. Gives us at least that initial report so that we can at least identify what the next steps are going to be and where we're going. Gives enough time for the past 10 months to be documented, and so that we at least have a baseline so that we can go to the next step.
And that's 2 months.
Yeah.
Okay. That certainly is now added. Questions? Go ahead, Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy that we are going with we're holding firm on the 2019 rates. I think that's the right thing to do given the circumstances. I know senior staff have heard me talk about monthly billing. I think that's a must that we should have. I know we've talked about it at length in the past, and I echo what Councillor Carruthers has been saying. I think it helps people budget better, but also they can react to behaviors, and so there's a positive impact and a negative impact when you're wasteful with water. I think we need to do more with our conservation measures. I'm not sure. I know we spoke about it last year at this time in great detail. I don't know if it was heaved over to the fence to the Environment Committee, but anything we can do to support that. But for me, the question that I have is around our pricing. I think we're due to have a pricing review on our rates every 5 years. Are we due for a pricing review anytime soon?
For you, Madam Mayor. The pricing review is part of the water financial plan that we're planning to do this year, and hopefully we're targeting Q3 to complete.
Okay, good. Spending 20 years in insurance, I've dealt a lot with actuaries, and I have great respect for them, and I know they'll be assisting in the review. I have a great respect for actuaries, but I also have a healthy skepticism that I think they build in an inordinate amount of conservative and caution into it. So, and I think last time I looked at our reserves, even though we were mandated, or we were, it was suggested we take an 80% rate increase over a number of years, where we only took 30%. We still have very generous reserves in our water budget, unless that has changed since the last report. Mr. Marshall, can you state that our reserves are still in a healthy state, or are we under-reserved?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So we do have a good reserve balance. However, I would suggest that they're not at the levels that would be recommended, not only under asset management practices, but under our financial recommendations. So we are in a solid position, but there's some steps to go.
Councillor Morton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to, I guess, Warren. And just a reflection on what Mr. Webster was saying. How do we know that the region's meters and everything are correct? Can we trace that? How do they get those figures and pass them off to us?
Mr. Webster, you have your hand up. You must have an answer.
I would appreciate an engineering answer, but I don't know if we want to get into that level of detail. And I think that this resolution, frankly, and the presentation are a little mixed. The establishment of a staff task force with the region, I think should, to investigate metering and water flows, should be on the council resolution. I think we want, I'm not a big fan on having too much show up at regional council, but the fact that we're having a significant water loss issue, we want to establish a collaborative task force, is something I think that we should incorporate into our recommendation. And I've seen several iterations of this, and I think problem is I did see one that did have that as part of the council resolution. I think it somehow got filtered out here. That may be the challenge. And the answer to that question is very difficult, to be frank. And it's further complicated by the fact, and I'm a layman, not an engineer, but the meters are two-way. And you have water moving both ways across boundaries. And you also have metering systems through Newmarket as well. So in this instance, we're hopeful that working directly with the region, there was a program to put new meters in, and we're hopeful that our new meters and some of those new meters, there's a system that could be put in place that could actually check the flow of them. We'll leave it up to our engineer group to do that, but our intention would be by the end of Q1 to have some form of a status update here as to what the bigger problem areas are and what some of the potential solutions are.
Mr. Webster, are we unique in this across the region? The region supplies water to 9 municipalities. Are we the only ones, or are you hearing from other CAOs that there continues to be an issue right across the municipality?
I'll leave that to Mr. Marshall. His experience at the region's a lot more current than mine, but it's certainly been something that was there historically, and maybe Mr. Marshall can highlight if it's a recurring issue.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Through various stages, most municipalities have raised this as a point. There was actually a task force that was formed about 5 or 6 years ago to look at the issue as a whole, and it was hard to determine what the actual resolution was. So municipalities have brought it up from time to time.
It's unfortunate Chair Emerson has left for the day. It would have been an opportunity for him to understand an area that I don't hear at the region. It doesn't come to the region table, but it certainly is something that and that's why I asked if it's more than just us. I think it's very concerning that we need to work for ourselves, but perhaps in a collective with the other municipalities as well. Councillor Foster.
Not to get down into the weeds too far on this stuff, but I wonder if water loss itself might be a topic for a future workshop. I think a lot of people around the table here have no idea the amounts of water that you may be talking about. When I was with Emergency Services a number of years ago, I was charged with figuring out how much water we had actually used at specific incidents. And those numbers are staggering. And I would assume that a simple water main break, those numbers would be staggering. In a specific year when you might have 3 versus the year before when you have 1, I would expect that the numbers are going to be a lot different. So it might be a good idea just to throw some facts and figures together and give us all at the table a little bit of a better idea. The presentation that Mr. Hollett did just a few minutes ago certainly makes sense, all the different ways of water loss, but I still don't think that there's probably a good understanding up here. So it just a suggestion.
You're very timely. Item N is new business and workshop topics, so it's already there. Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. I think it's ironic after addressing so many emails from constituents about the accuracy of the new town water meters, that now we're questioning the regional water meters. Apparently the advice that we were to give our residents was turn everything off and see if the meter's still going. So I would offer that suggestion. I just wanted to respond about the Environmental Services Water Strategy that they are putting together, Environmental Advisory Committee Water Strategy. The committee has been working very hard on this, and it is getting close to being brought forward. We'll hopefully see it within the next month. And they've got a lot of great strategies in there for residents and ways for us to communicate, et cetera. So I know it's been a long time, but it took a while to get the committee up and going, and some other issues had come up to be addressed, but they're taking this one very seriously, and it's going to be a very comprehensive report. So when that comes forward, you'll have some good reading material. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Lamanna.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we'll put the proposed resolution up on the screen. I think we heard a number of different points. We just want to ensure that we capture those correctly.
Can everyone read the highlighted section? Mr. Velchuk.
Madam Mayor, just maybe for a little bit of clarity, I think the last resolution there that talks about directing staff to approach the region of York, it would be to establish a joint task force to review the water loss issues in East Gwillimbury, because we're not suggesting that the region establish a task force and deal with it in exclusion. We're saying that our staff should work with regional staff to review this matter.
Questions? Not seeing any questions. Do I have a mover? Councillor Crone. Yes, go ahead.
For clarification, we previously had Councillor Roy-DiClemente as the mover.
I didn't see that. Where is it?
I don't know if I actually made the motion. I asked that clause in green be added. I wasn't sure if we had a motion on the floor.
Well,
It
then
doesn't
it's
matter.
yours now. Yes.
It doesn't matter one way or the
Yes.
other.
yours. You own it.
You're okay with that now? You own it. Yes, go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, just wondering, because we did have discussion about the potential impact of metering, whether that should say water loss / metering issues, because that way we're not just looking at the loss, but the functioning of the meters as well, and make sure that's been accounted for.
And it would, being in the yellow as opposed to the green would also indicate the region meters as well as the ones that we have here. Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. While we're talking about the metering issue, it's not for me. I'd also like to hear more about the difference between. We've got a program in place. It's a multi-year program to replace old meters with new meters, and we are hearing anecdotally. I don't have any statistics, but we're hearing anecdotally that residents are concerned because while they haven't changed anything in their household habits, their bills are climbing, and it's really just triggered by the addition of the new meter. And so maybe there's something wrong with the old meters, and not necessarily that the new meters are incorrect, but that the old meters weren't reading properly. Again, it's highly technical. It's not my expertise, but I'm hearing a lot of that, and I'd like to understand that a little better as well. Perhaps there's a step that can be introduced while that process is being taken place. I think we're in year 5 of 5 in that.
I know when I've asked about meters and people saying that their meter's not working right, and going back to those that are meter experts, tell me that meters don't speed up, they slow down. And so if they've had a meter for a long period of time and we put a new one in, it would seem that they've increased. So I'm not sure that comment's helpful, but I thought I should share it.
What they call them smart.
And any other questions or comments on that? Are we good with what we have here now? Okay. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Is there anything else in regard to Budget Committee, Mr. Velchuk, Mr. Webster, that we should be covering? We're finished with that?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We're on to other business and workshop topics, growth management, water. I assume we'll put that one on our water/water meters. Put that one on, whether it happens next month or a couple of months, at least it's listed. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Carruthers.
I get a number of questions about building permits, and I would love to have a presentation on building permits and what's involved, when do you need one, that sort of thing. Doesn't have to be right away. I just think it's a good topic.
Do you want to do it as a group, or do you want to go and meet with building yourself to understand
If others
it?
are not interested, I can meet on my own, but I think it's something that's kind of good for everyone to hear about building permits and when one is required and that sort of thing. It's up to everyone else just throwing it out there.
Well, let's put it on the list, and when we get to making some decisions on timing, then we can decide, have a discussion at that time. I also put down the minister's zoning order, And I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but I sure don't want to lose sight of that. And it may just be an update at some point along the way on where we are with it. We didn't actually ask at the time that we passed it what was the anticipated timing of that. I'd like to see it next week, but I'd be okay till the end of the month. But I'm not sure what reality is with that. And are there other steps that need to take place now that we've passed that? Are there other steps that we need to be doing to supplement and augment that submission? It might be a 20-minute discussion as opposed to a workshop, but I just don't want to lose track of that one. Okay. Do we have anything else at this time under other business? Go ahead, Councillor Persicini.
When are we dealing with the tower at Fairbrain Gate? You know?
Tonight.
Tonight? Okay.
Tonight.
All right.
Okay. So with that, we will have an adjournment at 3:38, moved by Councillor Roy-DiClemente. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So we